Welcome to Level with Emily Reese. This is a conversation with composer Amos Roddy about his music for Citizen Sleeper, the 2022 narrative RPG that absolutely stole the hearts of so many people who played it, including me. What a beautiful game with thoughtful writing, gorgeous design, and an absolutely fantastic soundtrack by Amos. I love this soundtrack so much. And I really just can't say enough good things about it. It's music that's full of tenderness and care, which is one thing that really stood out to me was how cared for this music sounded. Very hopeful as well, even though there are very harsh conditions that you're trying to survive in the game. And those harsh conditions are represented in creative ways musically as well. I absolutely loved talking with Amos about his music for Citizen Sleeper. Really look forward to having him back someday to talk about some of his past projects, like the Kingdom series, In Other Waters. So hopefully we'll have him back, but that's beside the point. Citizen Sleeper, absolutely fantastic. Now, if you want to hear the music like we do in the podcast version, that's where you got to listen to it. We don't put music in our YouTube videos. So check out the audio podcast if you want the full Amos Roddy on Level with Emily experience. Join us on Discord. That link is down in the show notes. Subscribe to this channel, get notifications so you don't miss our newest videos. And if you're able to support us financially on Patreon, that'd be fantastic. Patreon.com/level. All right, here's Amos Roddy talking about his, so good music for Citizen Sleeper. I don't want to get like all new agey on you or anything, but I just feel such warm vibes and so much like tenderness and love from the music, and like a little tinge of heartache too, you know, and it's just like, it just sounds so well cared for, the music, you know?
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that means a lot. I feel like that's one of my goals is with music to kind of make it feel human rather than like, I mean, it's all human because as of yet, it's all made by humans. It'll change soon with AI being the demon that is. But yeah, I mean, there's so many, especially in games, there's like driving music or like soaring stuff, and oftentimes I feel like, oh, my stuff is like rather mundane, but hopefully it also has a degree of warmth to it. So
yes,
yeah, thanks.
Yeah, a lot. And I guess before we get too deep into it, for those who are unfamiliar with the game, would you just give us kind of a little synopsis or summary of what Citizen Sleeper is?
Sure, yeah. So it's like a narrative-focused, sort of a video game interpretation of a tabletop RPG where you're rolling dice and actions that you want to complete are contingent on, how the dice roll, and you progress through. This is actually a terrible description because I'll start over. You play as a character on a dilapidated but still lived upon space station that's sort of in a limbo, where it's kind of in a no man's land, sort of. And you have to figure out how to survive on this station and make your own life. And you exist as this sort of sentient, mechanical human. I wouldn't say robot, but kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're experiencing what it's like to be an outsider in a number of ways, inhabiting this world. Yeah, I don't know if that's a great description. If Gareth, the developer, was here, we'd get a much better synopsis. But
yeah. And this is the second game you've worked on with him and that team, right?
Yeah. I've worked with them. Yeah, this is the second time. I don't know why I had to think so hard about that. We worked on In Other Waters together, which is another narrative-focused game.
Mm-hmm.
And,
no dice, though.
No dice.
No dice.
Yeah, no dice on that one. It was more of like a Metroidvania, but text. Adventure, like visual novel. And yeah, so Citizen Sleeper is our second game together. That's been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned about, you're human, but you have other components to you. And so one of the things that you learn right away if you start playing is that you need to find ways to keep your body surviving, right? You have to because even, today, if someone gets an organ transplant, they're on meds to prevent the organ from rejection, right? And that kind of theme is extant in the game too, right?
Yeah. So you exist as something that was made by a corporation that is reliant on a supplement, let's say, was just for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And without that, then it's just planned obsolescence to create a dependency.
Right.
So you have to.
Yep, planned obsolescence. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like aspects, particularly with the very first track, there's deterioration. And I didn't know how deliberate that was, or if I was just reading way too much into how you constructed that opening track.
The one that plays on the title screen? Probably.
Well, the one that plays on Spotify as the first track.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think.
Which one is that? Let me look. Because that's how I first experienced it, right? I didn't. I played the game way after I'd listened to the soundtrack 37 times or something like that. Seriously. Yeah, Density is the first track. Because that's not the menu. That's not what plays, right? When you first open up the game. Right.
The one called Sleeper does, which it has a similar kind of sense of dilapidation to it, I guess. That was definitely intentional. I think.
Okay.
I mean, oftentimes with soundtracks, I'll try to find an aesthetic or conceptual choice that matches the game. And then once that's established, I don't have to think about it anymore and I can kind of make that my own. So for me, it was okay, what's going to fit in this game? And then going off in this kind of Boards of Canada direction and liking the sounds of destroyed audio. And destroyed is a strong word, but audio that's altered by degraded means. I wish I could remember the name of. There's this one artist. I wish I could remember the name, but it's a very short tape loop, and they just press play on this tape, and you just listen to the tape get worse and worse because tape kind of wears out, and that's the whole. Those are the songs.
Yeah.
And it's. It could be very, very boring, or it could be very, very hypnotic, depending on how you think of it. But I really like ideas like that, and the one-way trips of destroying things.
Interesting.
I don't know if it's actually that might sound good, but it might not be true because I think the way audio works is if you have a crappy guitar and you play it, objectively it's just a different sounding instrument, right? It's not a worse guitar.
Right.
It might be worse to play, but it just creates a different sound. Maybe the intonation is worse or something. I guess there are objective measures of worse versus better. But sonically it's not. A toy guitar that costs $20 might sound far more emotive than some pristine $4,000 Taylor. I'm ranting. Okay. Sorry.
Rant away. No. So you said one way. Did you say one way deteriorate? One way destruct? What did you say? Yeah,
just that once you start degrading a sound, you can't retrieve some of the stuff that you.
Yeah.
It's hard because audio destruction is both subtractive and additive. Those are the wrong words to use, but you're both gaining things and taking things away. Oftentimes you're gaining extra upwards harmonics at the expense of the fidelity of what currently exists there. And you're probably adding a noise floor, maybe some artifacts, depending on what's going on. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought was really subtle throughout, except in Signal Haze, it's a little more in the front, was vocals. And some of them I didn't even hear till I put on these headphones and listened with, nice studio headphones, which was a total joy, by the way. I mean, all music is, right? Like everyone should have a nice pair of headphones, and they're not called Beats, but that's just something else. That's something else. But it's just like there were a lot of detail popped out in that way. But I'd love to hear you talk about the ways in which you used voice or vocal samples or however you incorporated that throughout Citizen Sleeper.
Yeah. I mean, there's not too much voice there, but everything that's there is my voice.
Okay. I wondered,
Yeah, just kind of messed with a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And usually I just make music by, like, especially mixing, like turning knobs until it sounds good. So I'm not I rarely like hear something in my head and then like, oh God, time to fulfill this. It's usually like, I don't know what my next step is going to be. Yeah, like most melodies and soundtracks I write are just the first time improvising with like tweaking. Because like I feel like unless I'm in like a bad headspace, my initial reaction is probably going to be as good as anything else. Also, I used to be really precious with music. I'm like, oh, this song can be better. And I spent years failing to release music because I was so in my head about it and have like hundreds of these work in progress things that never went anywhere. And now I just don't want to spend that much time with music, which is probably why I write simple music.
Yeah.
Just a little easier to finish up. So the voice stuff is a lot of pitching and resampling and saturation, which is like which is distortion, basically, overdrive, and just some of it was referencing like kind of 90s electronica stuff. But just kind of messing around until I found something that felt vibey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And warm too, like that word I always think of when I hear the soundtrack, because that was part of the mixing too, right? You're mixing it to sound lush and full and warm as opposed to cold and jagged and harsh. And I feel like I wish I had better terms like an audio engineer would to say, but a track like what's the one? Let me more appropriately grab my notes here, because then I can tell you exactly what the hell I'm talking about. Coalesce. It's like one of my favorite. So I starred my favorites. Coalesce. Definitely one of my favorite tracks. It's very calm and kind of slow moving and whatnot. But there are kind of these, and aggressive isn't really the right word, but they certainly could have sounded aggressive the way the melody line kind of does these rips through the texture. And I just was so taken with how differently that sound could sound if you had mixed it differently. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I know what you mean. That's one of my favorite tracks on the soundtrack. That first little
so
note,
good.
And then it dips into the next one.
Yes.
I was really pleased with that. And actually the trick of this song, which I was also pleased with, was the way I made it is I've got a Moog grandmother, which is just a subtractive hardware synth, and it's just one note. And then I just recorded the note, and then I digitally just like altered the pitch on a duplicate of that. So it's actually most of the song is just one note recorded and me just like altering it by hand.
Oh, that's badass.
Which gave kind of a neat, imperfect sound to it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to it really loud, and this was something I chose to leave in there, but there's all these little like scratchy sounds, and that's like leftover processing from me turning the knob.
Oh, cool.
Which was a digital thing. It wasn't a real knob. It was on a flat screen. I mean, a lot of that warmth is also just mixing dark. Which and warm is definitely an audio word. I feel like a lot of people think that like, oh, I don't have the language for it, but
Yeah.
a lot of these things like translate, and they're words that
Yeah.
musicians and mixing engineers use. But yeah, it just doesn't have a lot of high frequency. A lot of my music is kind of
Right.
darker and warmer,
Yeah. Yeah.
which might be an issue. Maybe that means it lacks presence, but I don't know. I always go back and forth, like, what do I do here to make this sound more alive, yet doesn't make it sound harsh? It's tough for
Hmm.
me. Everyone has their different. A lot of people are trying to tame their high frequencies. I'm trying to figure out how to fill in more of them, or at least space there.
Wow. Yeah.
Sorry, that answer was all over the place.
No, that answer was wonderful. Um, and the shuffle, when I very first emailed you, maybe it was the second time. I can't remember which time, but I was like, I love Matsutake. That track is so great because this shuffle sneaks in, this triplet feel sneaks in, I don't know, about a third of the way through or something like that.
Oh yeah, sorry. I had to write, finish writing and name these so quickly that I'm like, time to go check on what song that one is.
What,
But
right. Yeah.
that sounds terrible. But
No, no, I understand. It's a common theme on this podcast. I mean, you guys aren't writing them to name them, right? Usually.
yeah, I always give them really terrible placeholder names so that there's no possibility that I become attached to the temporary name.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's a
it'll
good
be
idea.
like gibberish in capitals letters. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, the gibberish that starts with like four P's, or like this fucking one too, like weird. And I'm like, oh, is it this fucking one too, or this one three with two exclamation points? I'm very organized. Yeah. Anyways, Matsutake. Um,
Yeah. The shuffle, man. It's great.
yeah. I think one thing I was really attracted to in this soundtrack was using sequencers. And for people who don't know, a sequencer is like um, it can be well. Just imagine you hit a note on a piano, and that sends a signal to play like a series of notes relative to that one you're pressing. So it'll be like I'm going to play a C, and then the sequence is going to be like 1, 1, 3, 5, and it'll do that relative to the placement of that first note as the one.
Hmm.
So you can create complex like melodic or rhythmic patterns um, with kind of like simple input, which isn't just
Sure.
to save time. It can also make it so that you're thinking in a way that you wouldn't otherwise, because you're like, oh, this is actually a little song in a way playing on its own on
Hmm.
top of other music. Um, so you can create like some fun polyrhythmic stuff, um, which I think this maybe has a little of.
The shuffling that goes through that track, but then you also do it in Yesterday's Sky, if you want to have a listen to that one. And
Yeah, I'll pull it up real quick. Oh yeah, this one was
the
fun.
brushes. What's with the brushes? It's like an electronic track, but then you bring in like these terrestrial, like brushes on a drum kit,
Yeah.
which I just loved.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I wish I had the session I could open up and look at. I think I probably just liked the brushes and I was like, oh, this is neat.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as much a like, what would really ground this.
Yeah.
Maybe afterwards, reflectively, and then like, I feel like
Yeah.
oftentimes when I get the like alchemical ingredients that make a track work, then you can kind of build around what it's created.
Hmm.
Um, um, I think this one had like I think the working title for this one was Slow Dance in Space, which I was like, that
Okay.
kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I really love brushes. I
Yeah.
would love more of an excuse to use them. It does kind of fit in this track, though, I feel like.
It
I'm
does.
speaking loudly because I'm listening to it at the same time. Sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah, that's kind of
Uh,
lucky.
did you play them, or is this samples? Is this synth stuff?
Um, yeah, the brushes are samples.
Yeah.
I think I didn't record any live percussion for this. At most,
Okay.
it's like me taking samples from a subtractive synth and
Okay.
kind of repurposing them for like my there's a kick that I use throughout this like a kick drum, like my bassy drum,
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah.
That's not a good. That's trying to describe it. It's like an 808. No one's gonna know what that means. But yeah, other than that, everything's sampled.
Okay.
And I do a lot of using existing sample libraries, partially because it's expedient
Yeah.
and in games you don't really like. We have to write soundtracks pretty quick oftentimes.
Right. Yeah.
And also I'm feel like I'm really impatient as a if I can't make something feel musical quickly, then
Yeah.
I'm not much of a tinkerer. Like I have an
Okay.
MS-20 in the closet, which is a great hardware synth,
Okay.
and it's too much of a pain. It's like modular synthesis. I've never gotten into it, and every time I'm like,
It's a
I'm
lot of
going
work.
to, and like,
Yeah.
I hang out with like someone who has all that, has like a wall of it, and
Yeah.
it's just like I don't know how to make something cool, and I just lose interest. Which
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything bad about the synths. I'm
Of course. Of course. It's
just
just,
impatient, I think.
yeah. Yeah.
Or
Or just
fickle.
to have different interests.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I started with acoustic instruments.
Okay. Yeah. Which
Which
ones?
piano and guitar.
Okay.
I'm looking at a piano or a guitar. That's
Yeah.
not a piano. That's a guitar. I realized by looking behind me that doesn't help anyone who's
Yeah.
watching this. There we go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Acoustic instruments are great. They just create the sound they make, and
Right.
it's an actual body of wood or metal or whatever, like moving through air.
Yeah.
There's one thing I miss about writing music for games. Oftentimes, it's not a very tangible relationship with the things that are creating sound.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but sorry, this got off course from
Not at all. I mean,
brushes.
how old it did, but how old were you when you started music things?
Um, let's see. I had a guitar when I was in high school, but probably around 20.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I went to school for culture anthropology, so
Damn.
no connection to music. Um,
Brainy type.
no, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Yeah, I was a pretty apathetic student.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's okay. I learned how to navigate a bureaucracy, so I guess it's used.
You please write a book and tell us the rest of us how to do it.
Oh, not well.
Okay.
Yeah, just passively.
You just made it
Yeah,
through. Yeah. Where did you go to
yeah.
school?
I went to school in New Mexico.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
from New
Okay.
Mexico, so
Oh, cool.
University
Okay.
of New Mexico in Albuquerque. Yeah,
Nice. It's beautiful. Just like so different. I mean, I did not grow up in a desert. It's just amazing to me down there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It is really pretty.
Yeah.
It's very dry, which is why
Mm-hmm.
I moved to the Northwest. I think
Oh, okay.
maybe not consciously. I had a lot of friends
Okay.
that were up here, but
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I think moving water when you live in New Mexico feels like this incredible
Mm-hmm.
like psychedelic novelty just to see
Yeah.
like it's as if you're seeing a body of water for the first time every time you see it, a river. And unfortunately that wore off. Need to probably reinvest in psychedelics, but
You probably can in
yeah,
Portland a little easier than
yeah,
other places.
it's true. Yeah, I don't think I don't know where we're at, but it's at the very
Yeah.
least decriminalized here,
Amazing.
which is
Yeah.
nice.
That is
Um,
nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah, but probably around 20, and I started experimenting with electronic stuff probably a few years after that. So
Okay.
haven't been at it. I guess no, I mean, most of my adult life has been surrounding music one way or another. Um, but yeah, it all kind of started taking off in like 2014, 2015 with a little EP I wrote that thankfully I was able to successfully pitch to some game developers just because it sounded fun to dovetail my interests of games and music. And yeah, then the first Kingdom game, if anyone's familiar with that.
Yeah, there are
It's
many.
crazy that it was now 2015, which is a long time ago.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
You do other media projects though too, but you just have done now several games.
Yeah. Yeah, I think games kind of offer me something unique. I get a lot of autonomy from it.
Mm.
And I think at this point, thankfully, people kind of want to work with me specifically because they want me to do what I want to do.
Right.
And they trust me to do that. And for a while, I was doing like Warner Brothers kind of trailery stuff.
Oh
And
wow, that's quite different. Yeah.
yeah, and it wasn't very fun. It was also sound design, which I am
Okay.
not quite as drawn to.
Okay.
Um, but just kind of like this big ad agency vibe stuff, which isn't bad. I shouldn't say big. I was working with just wonderful people, but it's just tiring. It wasn't necessarily fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I kind of dabbled in doing a little bit of like producing for um, like bigger artists, like mainstream hip hop stuff.
Okay.
Um, and that I don't think was a good fit for me either.
Hmm.
It just was really stressful, and it didn't feel like it allowed me to do um, my own work as much. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really go after that. I really enjoyed working in games.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, although I mean, I could get one of those like records and put them on the wall, which is kind of neat. Uh,
Nice.
yeah,
For
weird
what
one-off.
can you say?
Yeah. So I this is like a weird little footnote, but I produced a Lil Wayne track like 2 or 3
Really?
years ago.
So you made the beat?
Yeah. I did the melodic stuff. I can send
Okay.
you it
Do it.
afterwards.
Yeah.
And
Or
then
just send.
like
Yeah.
yeah, there's some stuff like that. But I think that the album did really well. So like
You got the
it's like,
record.
but I really had very little to do with it.
Well, I
Um,
mean, but that's kind of hip hop in a lot of ways, right? It's an amalgamation of people doing amazing things to create an amazing track. Like, how many credits did Beyonce have on that last record? I mean, there's a lot of people that work on those tracks, so I would not say that any part of yours would be insignificant. That's my
yeah,
take on it.
yeah.
I don't know.
No, you're right. Um, it felt very incidental though. Like there was a track on one of the Kingdom soundtracks that like got re-uploaded to this like kind of like tastemaker YouTube channel, and then like it got sampled a couple times, and then like a
Nice.
producer for Lil Wayne wanted something specifically, based on that, and then so it wasn't like I don't know what sort of hustle is involved to make that happen on some like predictable course, but
Right.
um,
It's a
but
whole different
yeah,
world. Hmm.
I have a lot of freedom working in games though, at least
Yeah.
currently, and
Yeah.
hopefully that stays. And it's
Yeah.
kind of why I've stayed in like working in indie games too, because there's less people, there's more.
Hmm.
Um, well, what's the best way to say this? Yeah, you have like equity within the projects themselves. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, so it's a lovely way to make a living.
And how did you meet Gareth?
Um, Gareth reached out to me in 2019. Let's check when In Other Waters came out. If it came out in 2019, that wasn't. Okay, I think 2019.
Okay.
And they had a previous composer, and things didn't work out super well, and
Mm.
they were suddenly in a pinch to um, get a build ready. A build is like a version of the game, an early version of the game, for I think it's the sake of a publisher. Um, yeah, so someone pulled out of the project and they reached out to me and
Okay.
like my work on Kingdom, I think, and went from
Nice.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been friends since. And
Oh,
yeah,
cool. Cool.
lovely
And then,
collaborator. And
yeah. And how long did you work on Citizen Sleeper?
Trying to think of when the game started. I think it was in development for about 2 years. Yeah, so I think I was working on it for a couple of years. Um, Most of the soundtrack came together actually in a few months.
Wow.
Um, we had a lot of time, and I had a lot of flexibility in my schedule, and I had all these lofty ambitions, and I had done all these crazy experiments, with sound design, and I just ended up with like 1,000 ideas on the floor, and I think we had like 7 months before release, and I was like, oh, I don't have anything done, so I kind of had to pivot, and which is unfortunately how I usually work. um, yeah, yeah, a lot of those crazy ideas didn't get in there, but I think the experiments informed the choices I made.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe one day I'll do something with this. Yeah, so about 2 years.
Okay. And what did Gareth ask of you, or what was the kind of the pitch to you about the game in terms of you coming up with the sound? How did you determine the palette?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was drawn to the idea of making a soundtrack that could have sort of, at least, arguably been written by residents of this space station,
Mm-hmm.
um, using, like things that they would potentially have on hand
Yeah.
that wouldn't have to be brought in. Like, it's not like, well, it's space, so someone's flying in a bunch of synths from, the Pacific Northwest. Just like lots of like the idea of having transformers and old vacuum tubes and these kind of things. Maybe like
Yeah.
they didn't have any reel-to-reel machine type, but maybe they would. I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah, so that was sometimes it's nice to create like a creative restriction in order to get some
Sure.
traction on where to take things, because especially now, like we have access to so many different sonic palettes
Mm-hmm.
with technology. So yeah, but the Waters had done well, and the sound had been well received. So I think they were happy to just let me do what I wanted. So it was a kind of a light hand with
Okay.
um, guiding, and I think we've kind of found a good pace with that as collaborators. Um,
Did you put some kinds of tangible restrictions on yourself in advance?
um, Not really. Um, I think oftentimes the way I think of writing a soundtrack is it's like, or an album, it's kind of like going into a room with absolutely no light, and you kind of have to feel objects. And
Sure.
the more you feel the edges, the more you can kind of articulate the space you're in. And eventually, you don't necessarily need to feel out the objects to know where you are.
Yeah.
And once things get developed a little more, you can kind of like you can throw something in and realize that it doesn't fit pretty easily, or realize that like maybe this was some missing ingredient.
Mm-hmm.
So I think initially I would have thought like, I don't want pianos in this. And then later there is a fair amount of piano. I just kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's treated in a very specific way to make it less roomy, so
Yeah,
that
it's not
the
in your face piano-y like in a concert hall piano.
yeah, I'm trying to remember. There's only a few tracks, I guess, with piano, but they're in there.
Mm-hmm.
They also have like really unrealistic reverbs to prevent you from feeling like you can relate to the space that they're in, which I didn't want to have happen.
Sure. Sure. Interesting. Um, Also, just kind of the positive vibe to some of the music too, in such a really difficult environment, right? I mean, you're hungry all the time. You never have enough money. You're always looking for work and money and meds. And I mean, it's just, it's just a bummer.
Yeah.
But in a beautiful way. But you know, again, like a really, really positive vibe to some of these tracks. Like another one of my favorites, Photosynthetic Skin, has a really just kind of upbeat groove going, you know?
Right, it is kind of upbeat. I had to turn it on.
Yeah.
As soon as I turned it on, I'm like, oh, the song. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. I mean, I feel like the music of my own that I enjoy the most, which that's kind of a weird thing.
No, I mean, I would hope you enjoy
with
it.
their own music.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really. But then, like I would hope that there is kind of like a melancholic hope to a lot of these tracks.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's the space that I'm often most drawn to exploring.
Okay.
Whether it's this soundtrack or it's the next one, or a sense of space. Yeah. I think a lot of games soundtracks, especially games, is like, you know, like really driving or like hard hitting or like pump you up or really sad. I mean, because, you know, like if you have story beats to hit and you really want to like make sure the audience understands that they're supposed to feel glee or something. But I feel like I'm more drawn towards these in-between states. Sure. Maybe it's because I rarely feel like my own life is explicitly happy or like miserable or I don't know. It's not very. I haven't had that simple of an emotional experience.
Sure,
or not
right,
simple,
right.
But
well, I know what you mean.
Clear. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the complexity and just in betweenness, that bittersweet kind of thing that happens with so many events in our life in some way, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll write big soaring scores or something, but I also don't know how to do that.
Comedy or something. Yeah.
Yeah, comedy.
Score a rom-com.
I would probably do a terrible job with that.
You might surprise yourself. It's in there somewhere, I bet.
Maybe.
You said something, you know, I don't know, 20 minutes or so ago about this is why you write simple music, something along those lines. And that is a word that I use a couple of times throughout my questions that, you know, you can't read. But one, you know, I felt that about Coalesce, like it's very simple sounding texture. I know there are a lot more things going on than we're really aware of sometimes, but also Ship Watching. Give that a listen.
I don't want to keep closing this window every time I have to.
Yeah, don't close the window. Leave it open because there's more questions coming. Cool. But yeah, Ship Watching, just a very simple texture. Initially, just a couple notes, and it builds a little. But I really love that innocence. There's a tenderness and an innocence to it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that's lovely to hear. That's one of the things I would like to work towards and achieve. Yeah. I mean, achieve. I don't know if that makes. I mean, that implies an end result or something, or a final point. But yeah, I think for me, and I've always felt this way, especially when you get to like solo instruments like a guitar or piano. Like, there's something that to me feels increasingly alchemical about having as few ingredients as possible that still can create impact. Mm-hmm. And I think one of my sort of like, I don't know, internal platonic ideals with music is to make things that have, you know, very, very few moving parts and are able to explore a space, or I don't know if I would say tell a story, but resonate on some emotional level. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've always been drawn to that, and that's something I think is one of, and will continue to be, I don't know if I'd call it a goal, but the return for me. Yeah, I really like that, and I think as I get better at writing music, I feel more confident to explore that simplicity. Because it's a little intimidating in a way, because
Sure.
if you have something that sounds crappy and it's just, like, I mean, because that track, Coalesce, it's so
Mm-hmm.
simple.
Yeah.
And again, it's like literally a one note is the majority of it. And then I cheated later on. There's like accompanying melodies and stuff, but
Yeah.
that could have been terribly boring, and maybe for a lot of people it is terribly boring. But
Hmm.
yeah, it would have been a little. I think like 5 years ago, me would have adorned it with a bunch of other stuff,
Oh,
with the
interesting.
fear that it was
Yeah.
boring.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well, we all
I,
won for that. It's good. Good we didn't get 5-year-old 5 years ago you or whatever.
yeah. Thanks.
It's great. It's great. Um, the very final track on the Spotify or on the soundtrack, which by the way can be purchased on Bandcamp. Stream it, buy it, support it, however you can. Not you personally, Amos, but
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah. But the very final track, Possible Futures, also feels very personal. It's almost like a closing hymn. It felt very like stately in a way. Like, I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Possible Futures.
Yeah, I think I wrote this one late at night. I think it was pretty much all one go.
Hmm.
And I think I was just messing around on this cool patch I had.
Okay.
And I think that was about it. I remember it came together really quick. And I feel like the music I like of my own the most, maybe this is because I've spent the least time with it,
Hmm.
is the stuff that kind of emerges quickly. And
Yeah.
it could largely be because it's not so labored that I'm just like, oh, neat. Um, I
Yeah.
mean, ideally, as a musician, like I think like you're just the first person to hear the thing you make, and that's your
Right.
relationship with it. Like I have no, I feel no sovereignty over the. This is actually not true in terms of copyright and stuff like that. But like, I don't feel like the music I've made necessarily belongs to me.
Hmm.
Um, I don't, I don't know. It doesn't. We're just making. I don't know. That's its own rabbit hole, but.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, this one came together quick. I
Hmm.
really like this one.
Yeah.
Partially just the luck of this instrument patch I'd made being kind of appealing and the
Mm.
reverb kind of being immersive on its own.
Hmm. Yeah.
A little bit of cheating. Don't tell anyone. It's okay.
Cheating. Give me a break. One of my other starred tracks, Prismatic Lens, and this must be a sequencer track, I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
But this was another one of those tracks where when I put on my good headphones, oh my God, I heard the coolest stuff I hadn't heard, just playing out of my shitty laptop speakers. But yeah, talk to me about Prismatic Lens. I just, the melody just weaves through. It's just so cool.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like this one. And
Yeah.
this is a sequence track. I mean, that
Yeah.
initial arpeggio is not being played by hand. It's something I sequenced in and didn't really know how it would turn out. So,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the using a sequencer is like, for me at least, like setting yourself up for happy accidents where you press
Sure.
something and you play something else on top of it without knowing exactly how they're going to intersect.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, usually, like when I'm constructing a track like this, I'll find a hook that I like. In this case, it was that initial arpeggio.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got this sub bass coming in, nice big sine wave. Just keep it really simple. It goes on for a long time without changing, which I felt a little insecure about.
Oh, really?
Like, oh, it's going to be boring. And I was like, no, stick with it. It's okay. And then I think the melody is kind of just like whatever first take felt good.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think I've got this weird voice in here.
Yes, which I didn't hear
Yeah.
until I put on my headphones.
Yeah, so I think that's
Yeah.
me, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And then I used a technique called Verispeed,
Oh.
which is kind of you're basically like speeding up or slowing down a tape. Imagine that, but it's happening. It's
Yeah.
just, when you if you like put your finger on a tape, it's like,
For
oh,
sure.
like that. So
Yeah.
it's slowing down the speed and the pitch, or it's speeding it up. So I just lifted
Okay.
the pitch, and then it's super drowned in reverb. I don't know if you're curious about the technical
Oh
aspect of
yeah.
this,
Yeah,
but
no, definitely. Go there. Go there, please.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's super reverby. It's very wide, meaning the stereo image is all the information is forced to the left and right channels, so there's not much
Okay.
commonality in that center channel. So
Sure.
if you like collapse the left and the right to mono, there wouldn't be very much overlap, but there would be a lot of cancellation, which
Yeah.
so it doesn't sound good on a mono speaker. But and then when you hit the one, it's like whoa, boom. Sorry, no one can hear what I'm listening to.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, you got like a side chain from the kick drum that's like making it pulse. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm just soloing the reverb going out. So it kind of comes in and then it like bounces
Oh.
out this way,
Okay.
which is I feel like it sounds kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few things in this track where I like have something start out and then like kind of hit the center and then like
Okay.
bounce back out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which I imagine was just an idea in the moment. Um, I think part of me mixing dark, which you lose a sense of space and presence when you mix things dark, meaning not a lot of high frequencies.
Right.
So I
Okay.
tend to gravitate towards like other ways of creating a sense of space
Hmm.
and doing like imaging tricks, simple ones like
Mm-hmm.
this. Just seems fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. I rarely strategize with it. I'm just like, what would make this sound neater?
Yeah, no, that's a
Or
beautiful thing.
yeah,
Um, two more, if you'll indulge me.
yeah.
Um, maybe three. Cycles is great.
Psychos.
And again, I've mentioned a couple times how many times I listened to the soundtrack before I actually played the game, and I was like, oh fuck, I should play this game. Like I've listened to this soundtrack so many times for so many months, and finally I was like, okay, I'm gonna play the game, and as my favorite tracks like pop in, I'm like, oh. I get all
Oh,
excited.
that's awesome.
And that definitely happened the first time I heard Cycles, because I love all the, like, you do this like exponential decay thing, right? With like these, kind of like wood blocks, or I don't know what the hell the sample is, but it just, I just loved that kind of reckless kind of, when it's like you're just dropping the stick and letting it fall. I loved that.
Oh, well, thanks. I like the degradation. This was one that I was really happy with. The
Yeah.
way it kind of, um, yeah, eventually it kind of turns into this like wash of the harmonics, but quite a bit more saturated. I think like two-thirds of the way through, and I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to hit this right mix of distorted but clear, because distortion can be really
Mm.
pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and immersive if it's not like over the top. I mean, it can also be used to make things, very, very present. But
Yeah.
I think this one. So I had an old reel-to-reel tape machine that I was using a little bit,
Oh,
but
nice.
just the preamp for it because it was
Okay.
uh, kind of broken, but could drive into it really hard and get interesting results. And I
Okay.
think for this one, um, there's two copies of what's occurring. Oops, just pressed play. That was loud. And so I have the distorted one that I ran through the tape machine sitting underneath the main one.
Oh,
And then I
cool.
just blew out that second one with a bunch of reverb
Oh,
and
fun.
EQ'd it. So,
Okay.
which is like a pretty common technique. Like, um, parallel compression or parallel saturation. It just means like
Okay.
you've got your original one and you've got the one that you're doing processing on. And like effectively by how much of each one you're getting like, a ratio of 50
Sure.
50 or 90 10 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you used to have to do that. Now you can just like use a mix knob if you're using digital tools and you're just like, I want
Sure.
this ratio. You used to have to do it manually by having these duplicates.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the saturation on that one. Maybe I should get that table machine in the garage.
Use it again.
Yeah.
What DAW do you use?
I'm in Logic. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I
Logic
really like Logic.
buddies. No.
Logic's great. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would. I'm periodically tempted to try Ableton, but
Oh, yeah.
I just the last time I tried to was a few months ago. It's just very different, and
Yeah.
in a way, like Logic, I'm comfortable enough with it. I know the hotkeys enough that's like becomes
Yep.
invisible,
Yep.
and yeah, it doesn't get in my way at all. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I think now like my mind has learned to think musically, structurally, like with Logic. It's probably like learned
Yeah.
around Logic, so it's a good companion. Although at the
Interesting.
same time, maybe I need to shake myself out of the patterns I'm in by switching. But I don't know.
I don't
It's
want to
not at the
cause a
top of
big
my list.
existential DAW crisis for you or anything like that.
Yeah, maybe if I get really stuck and stagnant and I'm like
Yeah.
writing the same song over and over.
Yeah.
But
Reaper. You'll just move to Reaper or something like that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Um, Among Ruins, also at the very end of the official soundtrack, and I'm actually going to hit play too. I love all the layers that build through this one. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh,
Hey,
this one's so good. And this one I think of much more traditionally as like you're just stacking on things every 8 bars or whatever it is.
yeah, and
But I
that's
just
totally.
loved that build. I loved it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this one is, if I remember, it's entirely digital.
Okay.
Um, this was actually a song that I oftentimes with soundtracks, you're like, oh, I want more music for this, or I need something, and
Yeah.
you have like a backlog of stuff you haven't used for other things. And I think this was one of those,
Oh,
which
cool.
is
Okay.
kind of an unromantic story. Like, this was probably sitting on the shelf for like 3 years or something.
But it found a home. That's the best part.
Yeah, I mean, I think I tweaked it to sound a little more Citizen Sleepery.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, but man, it's amazing what you can do with digital synths that are emulating analog ones. Like it's like tempting never to use analog synths. I mean, I know that's heresy.
Sacrilege. Yeah, right?
Yeah, don't say that. But they
Blasphemy.
just sound so good. There's so many, or not so many, but there's a few really excellent sounding ones
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that to me sound like very, very pleasing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and are much easier to use.
Right.
Like the grandmother has this thing, like it kind of has this like ghost oscillation where any key you hit, it will play that note until you replace it with another one at like a very, very low volume.
Oh, wow.
And it's not just an anomaly. Like I contacted manufacturer and they're like, nope, this is by design.
Oh,
And it's very
interesting.
quiet, but like once you go to do some like really extreme kind of like creative compression, or you're getting into
Mm-hmm.
mastering, or you're doing something that's really sparse where you want true silence, like
Yeah.
if you were just trying to get a simple like triangle wave or something, maybe
Right.
it'd be better to use like a high quality digital synth.
Yeah.
Um, anyways,
Who would you
that's that.
say, since you got into music, what I would consider to be quite late in life, honestly, who influenced you musically to kind of make you think this is what I want to do?
Um, I don't know. I mean, most of the influences were not instrumental. so much as they were like lyrical or
Oh, interesting.
literary.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah. I don't know why Raymond Carver comes to mind, but
Okay.
a lot of his short stories. Um, I guess within the electronic space, though, I've mentioned already, but Boards of Canada was, um, I think I had a few kind of psychedelic teen experiences with by myself with Boards of Canada, just
Okay.
being very enraptured. If anyone knows the band, I think pronounced Moom, Mom or Moom.
I don't know.
I think they're a Swedish band,
Okay.
but they're like just these kids that made. I think they were like 16 or something. And they
Oh,
made a
wow.
few albums that were just stellar,
Okay.
and I love those. Milk Hotel
Yeah.
was huge. I don't know. There wasn't a very linear. Um, like I think a lot of people that work in games, and I find this true the times I've been to video game conference type things, like people are very intentionally pursuing working in this industry as
Right.
musicians. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, working in games it wasn't incidental, but it was just like one of the cool opportunities for expression for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think if I could find the same autonomy and the luxuries that have been afforded from working in games, that if I could find that elsewhere,
Yeah.
and the same fulfillment, I would maybe do that as well. Or
Sure.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, sorry, that's not a very good answer.
It's a great answer. It's your answer, right?
Yeah, oh, this kind of happened. Yeah, this went well, and I just kept doing it.
Yep. I mean, that's kind of how we all want life to be in a way, right? I mean, honestly, I completely tripped into radio and I've been doing it now for 18 years or something
That's
ridiculously
awesome.
long now. So, I mean, it just, things just happen. And then if you're really lucky, you like it. And you're like, yes, I could,
Yeah,
I could
yeah,
do this to make a living or try to make a living or whatever,
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
special thing. Hmm.
yeah. I feel very fortunate. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, it blows my mind that anyone feels compelled to listen to my music. So
Oh my God.
I'm very
Seriously,
glad.
like, I mean, I just know this will be a soundtrack that I return to over and over again. And
Oh, thank you.
that there's a list of really great soundtracks on there, but you just kind of know, like, whatever the connection. Oh shit, I just fucked up my headphone cord. Just playing with it in my hands. I'll fix that later. I just immediately felt connected to the music, and I just know that I'll listen to it and share it and have other people listen to it for years to
Oh,
come, just years and
well,
years
thank
to
you.
come. Amos, what are you working on right now that you can talk about?
I can't talk about anything I'm working on right now,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Oh,
But
that's okay. I'm glad to know that there's projects out there that are happening.
yeah, yeah, it's good. Things are good. I mean, the
Good.
main project is getting the studio up, hopefully in the next month.
Right. Yep. Building a
Yeah,
backyard studio. That's very
backyard
exciting,
studio,
I'm
very
sure.
cool.
Yep.
Yeah, it is very exciting, kind of surreal.
Mm-hmm.
But sorry, I'm looking out the window at it. But yeah, working on a game right now. I mean, these
Okay.
sound so there's a game, and then after that, there's another game,
Okay.
and it's about all I can say.
That's good. That's good. That just means I'll have you back. But honestly, I would love it if you'd come back sometime, perhaps later in the year. Um, I I just started playing In Other Waters because I've just been so tickled with Citizen Sleeper and like my ability to figure out how to play that kind of game, which I like shooting things. So it's like that made me really happy. And then as soon as I started In Other Waters, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. So
Oh, cool.
I'd love to talk to you about that someday. And of
Yeah.
course, the Kingdom music. But there's also something else on your Bandcamp that intrigued me. And please forgive me for not writing this down on my thing, but it's two albums, Cloud Gardens, I'm very interested to experience that because it sounds like it's some kind of additive music or, talk about that just briefly, if you would.
Yeah, so the music in the game is most of it. There's two different modes in the game. One, you're just kind of building a structure or you're building a landscape with structures in it, with, plants that grow procedurally.
Okay. Nice.
And the other one, you're solving puzzles with. Anyways, so for the majority of the game, which is the puzzle half of the game, the music is generative. So you throw these seeds at structures or dilapidated structures. It's kind of like post-apocalyptic in an ambiguous way. But so depending on what seed you throw, it will trigger a stem, which a stem this is a confusing word to use because I'm mentioning plants.
Oh, in-game music, though, a stem
in
music.
Music.
I think we know.
Like a one-shot,
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so it'll pull from a pool of sounds associated with that type of plant that will grow.
Oh,
and
cool.
then everything is non-rhythmic, so that as you throw more seeds on top, they play on top of the existing or the currently playing extended one-shots that I think they're a 30 seconds to a minute, and I think in total there's 250 300 of these, so you can get these generative soundscapes that I think it'd be very difficult to create the same thing twice. So it's a really simple generative music engine in a way, sort of like Brian Eno and Steve Reich.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a fun experiment. And I think it's pleasing. And then the soundtracks that exist on Bandcamp or on Spotify. The volume 1 is me just curating those stems into and I worked with another musician, Mark Robertson, on the first release of music. So yeah, it's just curations from those stems. And then the second one, which has guitar and stuff on it, was just music that plays as existing tracks for the other creative mode. It was really fun. That was the creator of Kingdom.
Cool.
So, yeah, just kind of had fun with that project, and again, being a very neat interactive toy / game.
Love it. Cool. Well, I'd love to have you back on to talk about all of those things. But in the meantime, is there anything else you want to say about Citizen Sleeper?
No. I think that's, hopefully people are digging it.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, they are, for sure.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, people have been, it's been getting a good reception. It's been humbling. Yeah. I'm glad. That's neat.
Well, thank you, Amos, so much
thank you so
for
much
all
for
your
having
time
me.
today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. We should do this again.
Good. Plan on it.